Hello there, my name is Peter Thompson and this is one of my teaching videos. This one is called Definitions. Words to different people mean different things. For example, wicked can for one class of person mean bad things, and for another class of person it can mean great things, but it's the same word. Golf is the same. It's exactly the same. For example, if I use the word forward and ask someone to push their hands forward, quite likely they'll push their hands forward. Makes sense. Forward. But in golfing terms, forward is that way. It's a very simple example. That's why teaching is quite difficult. I think at address the left arm club should be in line. In other words, the shaft and the left arm should be in line. But I've given quite a few lessons when the person's had one lesson and they've been to practice their left arm club in line, but then they've come back for the second lesson and the left arm club is in line from this angle and also from this angle. That's clearly my fault. I should have said, I do now, that left arm club in line from the front angle where we are now, but from down the line angle, then not in line, the arms hang down almost vertically, not quite, from the shoulders, and the toe of the club will be in the air, which is there. It's another example. Many people ring me and they want a lesson because they don't understand what a wrist hinge is. Wrist hinge, wrist cock, it's the same thing. So I've asked many people to show me their interpretation of a wrist cock or a wrist hinge, and I often get that isn't a wrist cock. People would sometimes do that, which isn't a wrist cock. I pride myself in being able to explain to most people what I want them to know, and a wrist cock can be quite problematical. To me, a wrist cock is that. Some people do that. Well, that's a wrist cock plus an arm lift. So just a wrist cock or a wrist hinge, to me, is that. So the butt of the club goes down, so the head of the club comes upwards. Club head square to the target line. Many people find that quite tricky. I've been playing golf for a long time. To me it's obvious what I mean, but there's no point in me knowing. The person I'm teaching has to know. I know, my pupils need to know. Square simply means the club face points towards where you want the ball to go, which in this case is towards the camera. This little club has got no loft and a stick in the middle, and the stick is now pointing straight at the camera, so you probably can't see the whole of the stick. Now you can, it's pointing right. Now you can, it's pointing left. So having the face square sounds easy, but it isn't. The leading edge of the club, which is the bottom of the club, the leading edge is this one at the bottom, and that leading edge needs to point towards the target. So the target is straight down the mat, then we need to point the leading edge straight down the mat. And because you're standing to the side of the ball, and obviously above the ball, it's quite tricky to do it. It really is. I encourage all my pupils to stand behind the ball first, look down the target line, and then aim the face, the leading edge, to the target. That is now square. Square to me is straight. Club face pointing at the target. Another word, parallel. Have your shoulders parallel to the target line. Well, if you're just starting to play golf, you won't know what that means. You simply won't. The target line is down the mat, so we'll use a stick. So parallel to me is parallel to that line. So looking at the shoulders, target line, shoulders more or less parallel to the target line. Actually in the golf swing you stand with your shoulders parallel or a little bit to the left but never to the right. So parallel is parallel to the target line. Your feet will not be pointing parallel, they'll be pointing to the left. Even more confusion. So your shoulders more or less parallel to the target line, but your feet pointing to the left. Or open, another word. What does open mean? Open to me means the face is pointing to the right. Closed means the face is pointing to the left. So you could have your shoulders more or less parallel to the target line, but the face could be closed or open. If you're not sure, please ask the person teaching you. Very important. There's no point in the teacher knowing. That's irrelevant. The teacher ought to know, and the job of teaching is to make sure the pupil knows what we are talking about. If you're having lessons and you're not sure, just ask. I've taught people who run some of the biggest companies in the entire world, quite a few people actually, and because they're super intelligent, they need to know. And I've been asked many times, what do you mean by that? Tell me again, I don't understand it. So I explain it again, maybe in a different way, until they understand it. Going back to the word parallel, a lot of people just don't get that. If I'm standing on this mat now, then my feet are parallel to the mat. Front of the mat and the back of the mat. In the stance, you want your feet pointed a little bit to the left, but it has to be left of something, and it's left of parallel. Many of my pupils, they get a printout after the lesson. For example, here's a printout from one of my recent lessons, and it shows an arrow pointing down to the ball. That means the ball will probably go fairly straight. This man's handicap is +3, by the way. And on these printouts, people write notes in their own words, not necessarily in my words. I might write on them for some people. Other people want the notes in their language. Very, very important. The pupil needs to know what to do, and it needs to be explained to them in the simplest possible terms so they understand it. I taught one lady, handicap was 23, got down to 5 handicap. After 3 years of lessons, she said to me, which I was a little bit surprised at, but she said to me, I have no idea what you've been talking about for the last 3 years. She said, I know you're right, but I don't understand it. Well, thankfully, she now does understand it, and she's doing really well. So I can say to her, your feet are pointing open, closed, etc., and she can adjust it because she now understands it. But she didn't ask. She told me 3 years later, and now she does extremely well. Another thing is hip turn. I teach people to turn the right hip, and they will say, well, turn it where? Which is a very, very good question. So I then need to explain that the right hip turns round, so your right hip is actually going towards the target line, that way. Not just straight back, turning round that way. Have a look at top tip number 1. That will explain the hip turn. Some people simply do not know. The word swing. I use the word swing all of the time. Most teachers do, most videos do, most instructions books use the word swing. I'm going to show you a photograph now that I took in the New Forest near where I live, and this is the photograph. That's a swing. It's a swing attached to an oak tree on the branch. That's a swing. Most people think they're being taught a swing. Well, I'm actually not teaching anybody a swing, because the swing, as I'm sure you will all know, goes backwards and forwards, and it has to go backwards and forwards because it's got a fixed point. In the case I showed you, the branch of an oak tree or any swing will attach to something, so it will go backwards and forwards. That isn't what you are being taught. But even I use the word swing. I then try and redefine that, saying it's basically roundish, but the swing hasn't got a centre, can't have a centre, because head will go down, hips go to the left, knees go to the left, no fixed point. So technically it isn't a swing, and the swing also tends to go backwards and forwards an equal amount, but in a proper golf movement, backswing, forward swing. The forward swing is 3 times longer than the backswing, 2 or 3 times longer depending on one's age and flexibility, but it isn't the same backwards and forwards. So I tend to repeat things in my lessons, and anybody have your lesson, if they don't really understand what the teacher's saying to them, just ask. Say, sorry, I don't understand that. If I go and buy something new and I'm not sure about what the device is supposed to do entirely, I just ask them, what would it do? How do I make it do it? You need to have a very inquiring mind and not simply accept what you are being told. Ask, what do you mean? All my best pupils, they want to know. They want to know what to do, why they're doing it, and I can normally give them all the answers. And on this YouTube site, there's lots and lots of videos for you to have a look at, and you can look at the titles, and then you can go watch the videos, and you'll learn something from all of them. So, definitions. Definitions describe anything, not just golfers, golf swings, rockets, cars. Definitions, you need to understand what you're being taught, and then, believe me, if you understand it and you can do it correctly, your golf will improve. Competition for me is making someone play better golf from the starting point they're at. Some people, complete beginners. One young man I taught, handicap 23, 3 years later, handicap 1. Another man, handicap +1, brilliant handicap, and a few years later, plus 5.5. Because he would ask me, why am I doing this? Why are my hands going that way? Should they go that way? Should the club go straight back? Straight back. Should it? No. Comes back in a curve. Your arms are going away from you and your body's turning round, but it isn't straight back. I could probably spend another hour or two on these definitions, but I think you've hopefully got the point now. If you're not sure what the teacher says, please just ask him or her, what do you mean? Thank you for listening. Thank you very much.